Good morning, good people.
Good morning, everyone.
I'm Curtis.
I'm Michelle.
Welcome to our Sunday school class. Today's lesson's title is Why Do We Suffer? The point of today's lesson is we may not know why we suffer, but God meets us in our suffering. The passage is Job 30:26-31 and 42:1-6. But before we get into the passage, let's go ahead and get into our first question. What are some important lessons you've learned the hard way?
Oh, you want me to go first? Um, I would say when I was a kid, I learned not everyone's your friend because I assumed not everyone was your close friend. I understood the difference between close friend and school friend, etc. But I guess I learned the hard way, not everyone's your friend. Some people will pretend to be your friend until they either get what they want or get information they want.
Yeah, for me, it was the importance of obedience and asking for help. 'Cause oftentimes, if you don't do what God tells you to do, you reap the consequences of it, which is not fun to say the least. Um, and not asking for help can cause things to go from bad to worse really quickly. So now, understanding suffering, it requires a much deeper thought, because oftentimes when God takes you through a time of suffering, there's a purpose, there's a point, and there's a reason behind that particular time.
I would say typically it's for growth.
Yes.
It's not always about punishment.
Right.
I mean, sometimes it can be a punishment. I mean, because there are consequences to your actions.
Right.
Sometimes it could be an attention getter.
Sometimes he uses times like that to grab your attention and bring you closer to him. Sometimes he's pruning you, trying to get you to get rid of something in your life.
Or getting ready for something, for a greater responsibility.
Right. So now we dive into Job.
All right, Job 30:26-31. Yet when I hope for good, evil comes. When I look for light, then came darkness. The chunking inside me never stops. Day of suffering, comfort me. I go about blackening, but not by the sun. I stand up in the assembly and cry for help. I have become a brother of jackals, a companion of owls. My skin grows black and peels. My body burns with fever. My lyre is turned to mourning, and my pipe is the sound of wailing. So, just a quick thing, kind of want to set up Job for you before we jump into this, because I think they need to know the background.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, so Job was actually doing very well overall. He was very prosperous. He had a wife, he had kids, he had wealth, he had land, he had money.
Yeah.
He didn't want for anything.
Right.
And what happened was Satan was kind of like trying to make his bets against God. And he was like, I bet you that Job will not praise your name if he's actually put through suffering.
Like Job would curse God or
curse God's name,
turn against God,
right?
Like that, if he didn't have all that.
So God was like, not my servant Job. Job will praise me no matter what. So it started off in phases. He allowed Satan to make Job suffer. First, it was just taking away his land, his riches, his wealth. Then it was his family. Then, because Job kept passing the test, right, if you will, he kept on passing the test. Satan was like, well, you haven't let me touch Job. Job's health is perfect. Like, you haven't let me touch Job. So got to the point that God let Satan touch Job. And Job, he never cursed the Lord. Now, he almost got disrespectful. But he never cursed the Lord.
And this is where I think.
And so this is kind of where we're at right here. He's lost his family, he's lost his riches.
His friends are turning to him and questioning his faith. His wife told him to curse the Lord. And now he's sick. And at this point, his wife has left. His kids have, I think they died. Yeah, at this point, he really has no one. The few friends that are there, they're telling him, you need to curse the Lord and move on with your life. It's really rough. All right. Yeah, because this is exactly right. Because at this particular moment in time, this is where he starts to get a little. It seems like he's venting to some extent about what's going on, and he said, I've become a brother of jackals, a companion of owls. In other words, people who are looking on at what's going on and giving commentary about what's going on in his life, like his friends and his family, giving their opinions about it, about what's going on, about his faith. Because he feels as if he's being treated like an animal at this particular, like an animal instead of a human being, which I get.
Kind of rough.
Yeah. The question I like to ask here is, what are some ways people try to cope with suffering?
Some people try to go shopping to fill the void with material things. Some people stay in their phone, watching TikTok, Facebook, not experiencing life. They're hidden. They hermit themselves in their house.
They hide, in other words.
Yeah.
When you suffer, you hide. You typically hide in something.
Or some people try to go out and be amongst people who are not really their friends, but they feel some kind of validation from that scene or that crowd, that type of crowd.
But the reality is, they know they're being they know those people aren't their friends. They know that these people aren't really for their good. They're just.
Well, they may or may not.
Well, that's true. But they're hiding how they actually feel. They're hiding from what God's actually trying to get them to deal with. Because oftentimes when God brings you to a time of suffering, he's trying to put something on the table of your heart and say, it's time to deal with this.
Sure.
And if you don't deal with whatever he's asking you to deal with, the suffering will continue. To say the least. Another question: what are some ways we can prepare for seasons of suffering?
Reading your Bible, praying, fellowshipping with other believers, because it's very important to have true believers around you. Because when that time of suffering comes, they can't offer the quick fix solution. But I guarantee you that person will be in your right corner praying for you.
Right.
That's what you need.
Yeah, but that's one thing. Everybody needs somebody who will pray for them. On to.
All right, Job 42, 1-3. Job replied to the Lord, I know that you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. You ask, who is that obscures my plans without knowledge? Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know.
Now, this is after God checked Job.
Yes. So Job, he was kind of getting in his feelings about everything that was going on. He almost got a little disrespectful. The Lord was like, hold it. Now recognize who you're talking to. All us kids who have grown up, especially in the South, we have heard this phrase, who do you think you're talking to, from your parents or an adult?
And that's pretty much what he said in a roundabout way.
Yes. And usually that's our cue to take it a step back, check an attitude, think of our words, watch our eye language, because we all know the eye rolling is not allowed.
In other words, this is Job checking his language. This is Job remembering who he is in relation to God.
Yes.
Now, what truths about God encourage you when you are suffering?
He's an all-powerful, mighty God. Yeah, that's one. I think of it's an old hymn, but it's a true hymn.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to sing. I will say the words.
Okay.
All right. And bear with me if I get them mixed out of order, but I try to keep them straight. Okay. So it's the blood that gives me strength from day to day. It will never lose its power, for it reaches the highest mountain, or it flows through the deepest valley. I think of that because what they're referring to in that song is Jesus's blood. Jesus's blood had to be spilled in order for us to be able to have a relationship with God.
Right.
And that blood, it was spilled, I don't know how many years ago. I'm not a history major, so I don't know exact dates here. But it was spilled so long ago, but that blood has never lost its power. Right. That blood is still living. Versus our blood, when it is spilled, when it's gone, it's gone. You know?
Right.
But that blood, it still holds its power. And it really does give you strength from day to day. It gives you strength in some difficult times that you're going to go through in life. And it's kind of funny because you go through difficult times and then you get to a certain point in life and then you look back and you're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. And then you're going through something else that's more difficult. And it just seems like it's less and less difficult, but you got to realize something. When those moments seem less difficult, the further and further in time you go away from them, you're also probably getting stronger in your relationship with God. And
which was pretty much, in other words, that was the purpose. That's the ultimate purpose of suffering a lot of the time.
Yes.
Because oftentimes what the truths that encourage me when you're suffering is the fact that I'm not suffering for no reason.
Right.
When I'm suffering, I'm not suffering simply because I'm sinful. I'm suffering because God's trying to teach me something or give me something I need for the road ahead, or He's trying to get rid of something that's holding me back from doing what God has called me to do in the future.
It's true.
So oftentimes, knowing that God will take you through that God will has the forethought to do that. Oftentimes people think that when we're suffering that God isn't good, when reality is when we're going through suffering, God is still being good because he's preparing you for what's ahead. And a lot of times people don't truly understand that they automatically think because they're suffering that God isn't being good to them. When the reality is that he's doing what is necessary.
Well, that too. And you also got to remember, God never promised us an easy life.
Right.
He promised us a life. It was never said it was going to be easy. It was never promised to be easy.
Okay.
Right. Job 42, 4-6. You say, listen now, and I will speak. I will question you, and you shall answer me. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore, I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes.
Now Job is legit apologizing
for his out-of-pocket comments.
Yeah, for his out-of-pocket. Yeah.
Or out-of-pocket attitude. with what he was saying. Because sometimes it's not what you say, but it's how you say it.
And the attitude you have while you saying it.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and he got back in his place and he realized and he corrected himself. What's the difference between knowing about God and knowing God?
So I would say this. Before I fully understood of being saved, I knew about God. I
Yeah.
knew the children's Bible stories. I came to Sunday school.
Yeah.
I understood I was supposed to have a relationship with God. I prayed. I'll say this, I know I believe God heard my prayers. But I think when you realize that you're having a relationship with God and you're getting to know him is when you start realizing he gives you signs. For me, it's signs. He gives me signs. It's how he communicates with me. Some people hear God's voice. Some people, God gives them visions. He has different ways of communicating with different people. And I think the difference is you can know the story. You can know all the minute details.
But that
doesn't mean you know God.
Right.
Where you can know God and not know all the stories and not know all the details. It doesn't mean you're still not learning. It doesn't mean you're still not reading, because he reveals himself to you little by little. Because I think if God revealed his whole self at one time, we'd just be like, like we weren't ready for it. We ain't ready for it. He reveals himself to us more and more each time we're devoting our time to him, each time we're growing in him, each time we're praying, even when we ask him to reveal himself to us more.
The difference between knowing about God and knowing God is knowing about God means simply, like you said, know about stories.
You know his miracles he performed.
You know the basics about who God. You know who he is, but you don't truly understand his character and how and why he moves the way he moves. Knowing God is having that relationship having the relationship with God enough to knowing to where you know why he moves the way he moves to some extent. You know why he's doing certain things in your life, and why it seems like, and it, to the point of where even when to the naked eye it doesn't seem like God is working, but to the seasoned believer who knows who God is, they may not know what God is doing, but they understand that God is doing something.
How do I put this? It's kind of like this. Sometimes you don't see the behind the scenes of what God's working on until it comes into the big production.
Right.
Like you never know how God is working, and you have to trust in his ways.
Yeah, and knowing God is a part of knowing God. Knowing God is understanding that part, the part of when he says have faith and trust him, that you need to have faith and trust him and walk with him through that particular process. Next question. What are some ways our group can help one another when we are experiencing suffering?
One, you start by praying.
Yeah.
You cannot always physically do anything to help someone, but you can at least pray. Pray for whatever needs to come next. Pray for the help to come. Pray for deliverance. Pray for endurance, protection. You pray. Second thing I would say is sometimes we just need to talk to someone and listen. You can offer an ear, a trusting ear.
But sometimes sometimes they need that Christ-like ear to vent to get their emotions so they can help because some venting can helps a lot of people deal with their emotions.
It's true. All right.
I would echo the same things in that prayer. If you can offer a helping hand, do so. But the main thing is keep them lifted up in prayer and be obedient to God when you be open and allow God to lead you in what to do to help that person. What are some ways God is present in our suffering?
If you have a relationship with God, you know it's there. You may not understand why things are happening the way they're happening, why people who you thought were one way are completely something else, or people say one thing and do something completely different from their word. But God is going to still be there. God is going to see you through whatever it is you're going through.
Right. Because God is, like you said, God is always there.
He's in control.
He's in control of everything. It's the question isn't, is he there? The question is, are you sensitive enough to his presence? Or better yet, are you open? Are you open and willing to allow him to be with you in that moment? Because if you're not open to that, God's the biggest gentleman. He'll knock on the door of your heart. He knocks on the door of your heart. He doesn't break it down.
So our live it out section. Confess all suffering is not a result of sin, but sin can lead to suffering. So ask God to reveal any sin in your life. Confess that sin and thank him for his grace and forgiveness.
Honor. Ask God to show you how he wants to strengthen you during a time of suffering. While dealing with difficulties, look for ways to honor Christ.
Encourage. Everyone's experience with suffering is different, but share with someone how God helped you, strengthened you, and brought you to glory himself during a time of hardship or suffering.
Remember, the point of today's lesson was we may not know why we suffer, but God meets us in our suffering.
So our prayer for you this week, thank God for helping us with understanding during times of suffering. Ask him to help yourself, the group, prayerfully support one another when such times comes.
Love y'all.
Bye.
Bye. Have a blessed one.